I'm Tracy Sable. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, the next steps. Former President Trump and President Biden are staying busy in the race for the White House. We have the latest. Initial impressions. A closer look at J.D. Vance, Republican vice presidential nominee and practicing Catholic. Indie moment. Final preparations are underway for this week's National Eucharistic Congress featuring 50,000 pilgrims. We have a preview. And Color Guard, why today's Catholic feast has a deep association with the color brown. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. Our top story tonight, President Joe Biden hits the campaign trail for the first time since his rival Donald Trump was nearly assassinated over the weekend. President Biden's busy schedule in Nevada, a clear attempt to counter the Republican National Convention now underway in Milwaukee, where last night former President Donald Trump made his first public appearance since the attempt on his life. All this with the election just 112 days away. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Tracy, for President Joe Biden today, that busy schedule in Las Vegas includes an interview with Black Entertainment Television, speaking at the NAACP convention, and participating in what the White House calls an economic summit with Congressman Stephen Horsford, the chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus. The race between President Biden and former President Donald Trump hitting full throttle again. Just last night, heading out on his trip to Las Vegas while getting ready to board Air Force One at Joint Base Andrews, President Biden is asked about former President Trump's pick for vice president, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance.
He's a clone of Trump on the issues. A clone of Trump on the issues. So I don't see any difference.
For weeks, President Biden has been fighting to hang on to his candidacy, as calls for him to bail out of the race came in fast and furious after the CNN debate. But today, the New York Times reporting, quote, leaders of the Democratic National Committee are moving swiftly to confirm President Biden as his party's presidential nominee by the end of July, according to 4 people briefed on the matter who insisted on anonymity to discuss the sensitive deliberations. The move would formalize Mr. Biden as the nominee at a moment when Democrats are torn over whether he should run again after his poor debate performance.
And I had to start again. Just not true.
At the RNC in Milwaukee, meanwhile, Donald Trump's speech set for Thursday night, the last night of the event. GOP delegates cheered wildly when Trump, a bandage on his right ear after being injured during an assassination attempt and a wall of security protecting him, emerged in the arena visibly emotional, waving, pumping his fist, and thanking the crowd. Now tomorrow, President Biden, still in Nevada, addresses Latino civil rights organization Unidos US, looking to bolster his appeal to Latino voters as he tries to remain in the Oval Office for the next 4 years. And tomorrow night, on the Republican side, J.D. Vance will speak in Milwaukee. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
And it is official, of course. Former President Donald Trump made his pick for vice president, Republican Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales has more and what the freshman lawmaker brings to the GOP ticket. Eric.
Good evening, Tracy. Less than 2 years ago, J.D. Vance wasn't even part of the political scene. He was the author of a memoir covering an impoverished upbringing and was a venture capitalist. But now he's the new face of the Make America Great Again movement.
But I served my country successfully in the United States Marine Corps. I had a successful business career, and I have the vision and the agenda aligned with President Trump to make the American worker better off, to bring peace to the world, and to actually advance an agenda that's good for American citizens.
Senator Vance turns 40 next month and is now in prime position to put his mark on the Republican Party. He's a Catholic convert. I spoke with him when he was on the campaign trail running for Senate about being pro-life.
I'm the only candidate in the race whose values actually align with the Christian teachings emphasis on the protection of life, on the protection of the vulnerable, on the dignity of the individual worker.
The question now is whether that view will hold up after the Republican National Committee softened its stance on the pro-life issue. Republicans say Vance is seen as someone who can connect with voters who feel left behind and disillusioned by Biden administration policies. Vance has been one of the loudest defenders of Trump in the wake of his state and federal indictments and blocked dozens of judicial nominations in protest of Trump's prosecutions. Republican Senator Josh Hawley posted, quote, "Congratulations to my friend J.D. Vance, the next vice president of the United States. He's going to be terrific." But some pro-life organizations are sounding the alarm. The head of Live Action posted, quote, "Both J.D. Vance and President Trump support the legalization of abortion pills. This is heartbreaking and wrong. Vance was once strongly against the murder of all preborn babies. Both men can still change their positions, and we will pray and work for them to do so." As soon as Trump made the pick, Democrats sounded off, including House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, recalling Vance once termed Donald Trump America's Hitler. J.D. Vance will not unify us. He is an election-denying MAGA extremist, another missed opportunity to bring America together.
The frustrating part of yesterday was that, those of us in Southwest Ohio know Mr. Vance. That's not who he is. He's not a unity pick.
Bottom line, J.D. Vance was handpicked to lead Trump's new movement and to put a nail in the coffin of the Republicans' old guard. You may recall that J.D. Vance was against sending any more money to Ukraine, something that Congress passed back in April and something that Republican leader Mitch McConnell wanted. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
All right, for more on J.D. Vance, let's bring in Mene Ukabarua, a member of the Wall Street Journal editorial board. Mene, always good to see you. Let's talk a little bit more about J.D. Vance, this time about his positions on things like the economy, social issues, and foreign policy. What can you tell us?
Well, J.D. Vance's economic outlook is really based around the idea that free trade and open immigration, things that the Republican Party traditionally has supported, have failed ordinary workers in America, and that in order to lift the fortunes of average Americans, government needs to take a much more proactive role in boosting the fortunes of these people. So the idea is that we're going to have tariffs to restrict trade, we're going to seal the border to make sure that we don't have illegal workers undermining wages, all sorts of protections of this kind. The idea is putting a thumb on the scale for people who haven't been able to succeed in the modern economy without government intervention.
I also want to talk about his faith. Vance converted to Catholicism a few years back. How do you think his faith, if at all, informs his policy positions?
Well, Vance, as we've mentioned, is a fairly recent convert to Catholicism, was raised in a Protestant household, and I believe he encountered the Catholic faith as an adult in conversation with a lot of the people who he's met during the course of his career. And I think that he would describe Catholic social teaching as underpinning his approach to the economy. I do think that obviously there are people who would disagree with that and suggest that traditional free market principles are reconcilable with a Catholic outlook. But he definitely describes his more interventionist approach as being one that springs from the tradition of Pope Leo and other Catholic thinkers who have laid the foundations for how we should be thinking about the economy and providing for the poor and needy.
Yeah, Mene, why do you think Vance was selected as the VP pick rather than the other potential running mates? What do you think he brings to the ticket?
Well, I think that Trump's selection of Vance is really an indication that he's thinking about succession. Obviously, in the short term, there's an election that needs to be won, and a lot of people speculated that Trump might choose someone like, say, Glenn Youngkin from Virginia, who'd be able to potentially help him in a winnable but hard-to-get state. Vance comes from Ohio, which is almost certainly going to go overwhelmingly for Trump. But Trump most likely picked him because he's a young politician who could potentially carry on Trump's agenda, trade restriction, immigration restriction, and other policies that are designed to appeal to the American working class. So he thinks Vance is going to reinforce him with those voters, and also he's going to be loyal to his agenda in the long term.
Before I let you go, Mene, we have about a minute or so left, but I really want to bring this up too. As you know, in the past, J.D. Vance was really critical of President Trump. What happened between then and now to change his stance on Trump? And have we seen something like this play out before?
Yeah, well, I think that Vance saw the direction that the Republican Party and particularly the people of Ohio were going. At the time he wrote Hillbilly Elegy, before the 2016 election, Trump was gaining steam and popularity, but it wasn't clear that he was going to win the presidency, not to talk of redefine the entire Republican Party. When Vance decided to enter politics, I think that he knew that he needed to find a way to appeal to those same voters who liked Trump if he had any shot of being elected. So I think it was a political calculation on his part. He might sincerely have changed his views, but he also knew that it was necessary to align with Trump in order to have success as a Republican in the modern GOP.
Well, Mene, thank you for weighing in. We always appreciate your insights. God bless.
Thanks a lot.
Guilty on all charges. That is the verdict in the federal corruption trial of Senator Bob Menendez, a New Jersey Democrat. His wife and two business associates were accused of accepting bribes. Menendez was convicted on 16 counts. Prosecutors say that he abused his power to protect allies from criminal investigations. He also helped Egypt accept millions of dollars in U.S. military aid. Menendez had said that he was only doing his job as the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Outside the courtroom, prosecutors say the case unveiled, quote, shocking levels of corruption.
Moments ago, a jury in this courthouse convicted Senator Robert Menendez of corruption and national security offenses. This case has always been about shocking levels of corruption. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes in the form of cash, gold bars, and Mercedes-Benz.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy are among the Democrats now calling on Menendez to resign. All right, now to the war in the Middle East, where dozens of people are dead following Israeli airstrikes in the central Gaza Strip. One of the strikes occurred in an Israeli-designated safe zone. Another hit a UN school where hundreds were seeking shelter. The Israeli military claims that they struck terrorists who were operating in the school. It also says that it took measures to limit the risk of harming civilians. All this comes as mediators weigh options on a ceasefire deal. Well, Israel's military says that it will begin sending draft notices to Jewish ultra-Orthodox men. The news sparked another round of protests. As today, dozens of ultra-Orthodox men took to the streets in anger. Israel's Supreme Court recently ordered all young men to enlist for military services. Previously, ultra-Orthodox men had been exempt. Most of them instead spent 2 years in seminary. And now to Kenya, where anti-government protests are intensifying. As you see, police using tear gas to disperse the demonstrators. The protesters are demanding the resignation of President William Ruto, despite his saying he no longer supports a controversial tax bill. Local media reports that since the demonstrations began last month, dozens of protesters have been killed. And we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including In Search of Healing. A Catholic therapist walks us through how to deal with the trauma following an assassination attempt on the former president. Welcome back. It has been 3 days since the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump's life, and for many people, the images are still fresh. Tens of thousands of Trump supporters attended the outdoor rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. They included families with children who saw the horror firsthand, and even more people watched it unfold on TV and online. While the former president and current Republican presidential nominee fortunately survived, the trauma of that day could have lasting effects on those who witnessed it. Joining us now to talk about this and more is Allison Ricciardi, a licensed mental health counselor and founder of CatholicTherapist.com. Allison, always so good to be with you. Obviously, what happened on Saturday at the event in Pennsylvania was unexpected and probably seemed really surreal to a lot of folks that were there. That said, how do traumatic events like this typically affect people? And does it have a direct impact right away, or is it something that maybe is felt a little bit later after the shock wears off?
Well, it can be both, but for many people, it does kind of continue later because what happens when we experience a traumatic event, which is something outside of our normal range of human experience that overwhelms our ability to cope, it really gets encoded more in the amygdala of the brain, the fight or flight center. So it is important to get help right away, to talk about the experience, particularly, with your children, if you're struggling with it, to talk it out with somebody, to get those feelings out, to reassure your children, because otherwise it just gets stuck there. And, it can really have long-term ramifications. And obviously for the people who are there, there's going to be a much greater impact, than those of us who watched it, from afar after the fact on TV. When it was unfolding, nobody knew what was going to happen or, when it was going to end. So that's a very, very traumatic experience.
Absolutely. Now, so what advice would you give to parents, when it comes to talking to their children about this event?
Well, I think this was a very compelling thing to try to figure out and to watch, but it's been played ad nauseum on TV. And really, we need to be mindful of our children to limit their exposure. We don't need to have it on 24/7. But I think to also, monitor signs of distress in children, listen to them, ask them questions. If they start to, if they ask you questions, ask them what they're feeling. What have they understood in terms of what happened? And how can you make them feel safe again? I think, for us as Catholics, a huge takeaway of this was really the aspect of divine intervention, because that was really a last minute head tilt, and there's a lot of connections with the anniversary of Fatima, the shooting of John Paul II, which he survived as well. So I think as Catholics, this is a great opportunity to talk about the power of prayer, the power of, just trusting in God, even though sometimes bad things can happen like that.
Yeah, and that's such an important, point to make there. Let's talk just a little bit more about that, how our Catholic faith can help us process something like this and make sense out of a senseless act of violence.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that we do need to talk to our kids and even to, amongst ourselves. How are we processing our anger? I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now, and a lot of people are very, very stressed out. And there's been a lot of very inflammatory rhetoric on both sides because people are so angry. So we need to look at that from a faith perspective also, to remember that God is always in control and that we always need to have recourse to prayer, prayers of protection, prayers for the conversion of our, so-called enemies. That we really need to recognize that this is not a battle of flesh and blood. This is a battle of powers and principalities. So, to kind of take that faith perspective, I think is really important. And if you are struggling or your children are struggling, reach out on CatholicTherapist.com for somebody who shares your faith that can integrate that faith perspective, because that's really where our healing comes from, right? That we need to be dependent on God. We need to trust in the power of prayer and his power to protect us and in his power to bring good out of the terrible things that may happen in the world.
And Allison, so good to get your insights as always. We really appreciate it. God bless you.
You too, Tracy.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, the body of Christ. Why tens of thousands of pilgrims are headed to Indianapolis. Plus, a closer look at one of the most popular Marian devotions. Thanks for staying with us. The leading Catholic prayer app is reportedly no longer available in China. Alex Jones, the founder of Hallow, made the announcement saying the Cyberspace Administration of China informed him the app includes content that is illegal in the communist country. Jones says prior to the removal, Hallow had thousands of users in China. He adds that everyone at Hallow is praying for the people in China and will seek other ways to serve the community. Well, as we mentioned earlier, today is the Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. The Marian devotion dates back centuries and includes something to be worn around the neck or the wrist. EWTN Vatican journalist Paula Arraza has more.
Catholics traditionally regard the Blessed Virgin as a loving mother and protector. Throughout history, we have heard about the many times in which Mary showed her constant intercession and love for her children. One occasion is said to have occurred in 1251, when Our Lady of Mount Carmel appeared to English priest Simon Stock to give him the brown scapular, a part of the Carmelite habit.
The story is that he received a vision of Our Lady, who promised him and them her protection. The scapular was a sign of that devotion to Mary and of Mary's devotion to them, Mary's protection of them.
In the centuries following the apparition, the devotion surrounding the brown scapular became more popular throughout the Universal Church. While religious wear a larger brown cloth over the shoulder, laity can wear a smaller scapular, consisting of 2 pieces of brown cloth joined over the shoulders by straps.
As it wonderfully spread as a devotion for the whole church, the scapular as a smaller piece of clothing that might not even be seen exteriorly, but still a piece of clothing. The thing about that is that it sticks to you and it's with you all the time, like Mary. She's with you all the time and you're with her all the time. Maybe you're asleep or awake, but it's her presence that is the heart of this devotion.
To wear the brown scapular, which Father Ian calls a silent prayer for Mary's intercession and a symbol of her constant presence, is also to seek to imitate her in her virtues and love for Christ. Amidst the difficulties and uncertainties of life, the one who wears the scapular can always be assured of Mary's love and protection.
Well, the scapular, it's been very much promoted by the church and by the popes, by the church. It's very much embraced as a key sacramental in the life of the church. And what it is promoted as is Mary's commitment to the disciple, to the believer, her protection in life and at death.
Processions in honor of Our Lady of Mount Carmel are observed in Rome and throughout the world. In the Eternal City, a 12-day celebration of Our Lady of Mount Carmel begins today throughout next Sunday. It will culminate in a floating Marian procession in a boat down the Tiber River, a Roman tradition that dates back to nearly 500 years. In Rome, Paola Riasa, EWTN News Nightly.
Finally tonight, an important announcement. EWTN News Nightly will be preempted for the rest of the week. That's because the network will be broadcasting from the National Eucharistic Congress in Indianapolis.
Starting Wednesday, July 17th through Sunday, July 21st, Catholics from across the country will gather in Indianapolis for the 10th National Eucharistic Congress. EWTN is your guide and companion for this amazing event. Our live coverage kicks off with Wednesday's opening ceremony. Then, Thursday through Saturday, stay tuned daily for Holy Mass, an impact session, and breakout sessions. Every day concludes with a powerful revival session. The event closes Sunday with a revival session and closing Mass. Go to EWTN.com/Eucharist for airtimes so you don't miss a minute of this life-changing encounter with the living Jesus Christ. The 10th National Eucharistic Congress. Live coverage begins Wednesday, July 17th at 6 p.m. Eastern, here on EWTN.
And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.